Breath of the Wild was filled with moments that become memories for the wanderers who walked the plains of Hyrule. For many, that thinking faded into melancholy, the result of the realization that such a lyrical, wild trip was unlikely to happen in the near future. Link gliding with the parasail, the horizon at sunset from the Calbarico Hills, the castle in the distance enveloped by an evil atmosphere, the faint voice of Zelda who summons us, these moments that have been remembered in 6 years. Tears of Kingdom are the memories of those sights that can no longer be lamented. Chronophagia is a relatively new term. The French philosopher Jean-Paul Galibert, who accused hypercapitalism of devouring time in a 2015 piece, "And I substantially reduced the concept," deserves credit. It's a word that fascinates me, and it has frequently crossed my mind during my unending wanderings around Hyrule. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a chronophagous titan, but it lacks Galibert's negative and capitalist meaning. It is immersed in time, dragged into an uncontrollable vortex of discovery, always eager for fresh minutes to use. Even at its slowest, least dense, most thoughtful moments, it is time well spent. Even if you have to collect tree trunks to reconstruct a hamlet, or experiment with food to find the correct recipes, or go from one end of the world to the other to recover an important component to complete a minor task. Time is everything in Tears of the Kingdom. It is a recurring theme that appears in every cornerstone of Hidemaru Fujibayashi's work, whether narrative or whimsical. With rare instances, there is no rigorous metronome to mark the rhythm of the experience, if not our freedom. Tears of the Kingdom contains mysteries that can be disclosed well before the final stages. There are some assignments that can be avoided entirely because they were accomplished by accident during a curious wandering. This multidimensional vortex, a confluence of enormous epic and poetry of small things, must be embraced. It is important to stay in order to decipher an old language carved on stone steles. When you see a smoke signal in the distance or a suspicious hot air balloon with vibrant colors, you must slow down. You must stop on the edge of a celestial precipice, admiring the vertigo of the distance and reflecting on the path to a mysterious column that appears to stand out beyond the clouds. You must get lost in Tears of the Kingdom. And, on occasion, we may lose patience due to inevitable redundancy, unanticipated failures, and the atavistic ambiguities of the fun formula. But rather, we'll utilize time. In a Hyrule pummeled by a corrosive miasma, it's the most vital weapon we've been handed. Tears of the Kingdom are a type of Zeldian gigantomachy. Engaging in the story's telling may prove to be even more perilous than the threats we will encounter as Link, which is why he will not pass this threshold. What matters is that, as previously said, time serves as the primary matrix of Tears of the Kingdom. The story is always the same, with its dichotomy of good and evil, and it is beautiful like never before. It stays tethered to stereotyped laws and canons, to a mythology that sows fresh foundations but repeats its best-known pieces, not without tiresome repetition, and with a structure heavily derived from Breath of the Wild. Unfortunately, this is its most stringent limit. The stories of the four peoples to be encountered converge on the memories to be resurfaced, and the hunt for the princess becomes the fulcrum around which the hero's path revolves once more. What is different from the previous act is, thankfully, the intensity of the tale. It's more grandiose and more delicious. Main storylines and subordinate missions cross in a conceptually basic writing work that is crystalline, choral, and filled with tears of poetry that will be difficult to erase from memory. The Hyrule of Tears of the Kingdom is a theater with a wonderful scenography that hides numerous mysteries, huge and small. Some are deeply concealed, in the most remote depths of the ground, while others are so clearly apparent that they can be viewed from the tops of the clouds, such as those massive geoglyphs that clearly remind the Nazca lines, with an artistic and narrative solution that enraptures. Who knows how many or which secrets you will be able to unravel? What is certain is that when the final truth is revealed before your eyes and the myth rips the veil that envelops it, when you understand the mystery of the tears that give the game its title, you may cry one yourself. It was not by chance that I referenced the depths of the earth previously, nor was it to feed the rhetorical review. And I wasn't talking about the natural sarcophagi of treasures, minerals, and monsters that occasionally shore up the rocky ridges or form a secret route between two hills. Hyrule from Breath of the Wild serves as the foundation for a now three-tiered map that stretches from the heights of the sky to the depths of the subterranean. The world of Zelda, like the Triforce, is now separated into three pieces that communicate with one another. One can reach down through the chasms from which the unhealthy redness of corruption spreads, in a segment that mirrors that of the surface, where light cannot penetrate. Everything is pitch black, and from time to time, certain orientation signals can be picked up by the magma that filters through the rocks, indicating mortal peril but also a point of reference with its light. Exploring the subterranean is a much more difficult journey than walking in the Wood of Time or flying among the floating islands. One moves gropingly, with a growing sense of anxiety, in search of the smallest hiccup of light, while extricating oneself between rivers of miasma and contaminated beasts. It is definitely conceivable to illuminate this hidden world, as well as with less conventional ways, the sound of which is a daunting task, thrilling at first but ultimately irritating. If we wish to define it that way, the fault is likewise of a less brilliant creative direction than the other two sections of the map. However, feeling smothered by a claustrophobic heaviness, in stark contrast to the bright airiness of the heavenly panorama, where everything is apparent to the naked eye, is part of the game. It's a tripartition that nearly feels religious, from heaven in the sky, bathed in sunlight, to the gloomy depths of hell, brushed by fire, with Hyrule in the center that seems like a purgatory with a faux consoling beauty, still stained by evil. If Breath of the Wild took your breath away, Tears of the Kingdom will empty your lungs. The floating islands disseminate beautiful creative echoes of Skyward Sword, and pausing at each landing location, like a cloud walker, will be yet another challenge to solve. This experience, much more than what transpired in the previous chapter, is thus a never-ending hymn to travel, with the unavoidable exertion it necessitates and the rich pleasures it bestows. An adventurous and brave expedition will be appropriately rewarded with rupees, riches, resources, and equipment to get back on the road, bolstered by fresh confidence. However, unusual clothing and ingredients to mix are insufficient to stock up on life-saving foods. Not in the Hyrulean lands, where the black shadow falls and the red moon rises. Link literally has the most important weapons at his fingertips. The powers instilled in his right arm replace those of Breath of the Wild, and if previously the combinations of skills allowed the imagination to gallop without breaks, the potential becomes exponentially wider, almost immeasurable, in Tears of the Kingdom. If creativity used to have the overwhelming force of a running horse, it now has the force of a herd. Ultramano is the most versatile talent and will be employed the most frequently by explorers. It enables you to grasp the numerous interactive elements strewn around the setting, ranging from trunks to wooden tables and passing through objects of various type and typology. It is possible to join them with a specific touch, giving shape to improvised rafts, war chariots, slightly unstable hot air balloons, and miniature airplanes with which to pierce the clouds. Your imagination is most likely the only limit. To be honest, determining how far one can go in a concrete and quantifiable manner is challenging. The Zonal gadgets, whose origins are mythical, broaden the spectrum of variables and, when combined with Hyrule's laws of physics, provide humans with an enormous gift: freedom. It cannot, however, be abused. The new Zelda promises us a lot of time but provides us little, at least at first, to leverage its resources. The operation of zonal tools is dependent on a battery gauge, which, like health and stamina, must be expanded as time passes and the necessary materials are gathered. This is why every action, both above and below ground, must first be thoroughly examined and weighted. It is critical to understand that in Tears of the Kingdom, you must build a lot. The comprehensive exploration of the game world is, in fact, limited by the requirements of creation. It's not an option, it's a requirement. The schematrix, which speeds up the construction of the various clusters, is obtained in the latter levels and is similarly restricted by the number of resources accessible in Link's bag. It is an automatism that is only partially intended to save us time, and it does take away some satisfaction from the ideation process. Compositor, like Ultramano, is built on connection. It lets you to fuse weapons and shields with other blades, with other devices, with rocks, flowers, and even mushrooms. It has two purposes: On the one hand, it modifies the effectiveness of individual tools by combining attack power or elemental charge, and on the other, it restores swords, maces, or spears that are about to shatter. Compositor so atones for one of the most vilified flaws of Breath of the Wild, and gives weapons new life, a new time. Despite the numerous combinations, the accessible results are more beneficial than unpredictable, as opposed to what can happen, for example, with Ultramano. Then there's a Census, the skill that most prominently displays Nintendo's prowess in environment conformation. On a conceptual level, it is a simple accomplishment to apply. Using this power, Link can go vertically past any solid surface placed above him, as long as it is not too high. The utility in fighting is secondary, as a Census demonstrates its functionality during exploration, allowing us to shorten travel times and even bypass entire problems. Above all, a Census is the technology that allows the development studio to seize the stage and provide the players a lectio magistralis on a level-designed subject. At first glance, it appears that such power motivates us to subjugate the world to our will. Something begins to shift as the trip proceeds, and a new consciousness emerges gradually. Analyzing the environment with care, we see how the distances, heights, protrusions, little coves, or undetectable more or less accentuated slopes on the side of a mountain are deliberately positioned to assist us. Maybe it's not like that, but after 100 hours in the realm and countless attempted solutions, I had the impression that the moments when I believed I was cheating the game were actually expected to some extent. The design of this old, new Hyrule looks so carefully studied. In the context of such a wide and rich open world, such an emotion, real or illusory, is priceless. Reverto is still one of Link's special abilities. What I regard to be the most fascinating of all, and also the one with the least immediate ramifications, at least if you go beyond his fundamental functions. Link can use it to rewind the relative time of an object, such as a falling boulder, a mill wheel, or a platform. Everything around you continues to flow, and only that particular selected element retraces its motions until it returns to the initial point or the player decides to stop it. At first appearance, this talent appears to be used for solving simple environmental puzzles. In actuality, there is much more, as expected. Reverto is defined in the game as the power capable of making us relive the memories of objects and, if well applied in combat, it can give rise to situations with a high level of spectacularity, perhaps lengthening the life of some zonal gadgets on the verge of destruction, or returning a fatal blow to the sender. Battles get more tactical and intriguing with proper use of Reverto and Compositor, in combination with extra powers that Link will obtain during the quest, and which I don't think are worth expecting. On the other hand, the concept remains the same, even without revealing too much. The playful foundations of Tears of the Kingdom's combat are the same ones already tested in Breath of the Wild, with their difficulties and sporadic problems in managing multiple clashes, but they know an increase in offensive potential. Not the Master Sword, but the Leap of Intuition, is the most powerful weapon. Make excellent use of it. After all, the imagination's energy never runs out, and it is not bound by the rules of time. Familiar, yet distinct. Tears of the Kingdom Hyrule is a treasure vault of memories awaiting those who have already played Breath of the Wild. We all know that memories can be deceiving, and this world has changed. Not only is the map now divided into 3 levels, 2 of which are entirely new, but the primary surface, which was inherited from earlier experience, has also undergone the metamorphosis created by the passage of time. The avenues, plains, slopes, mountains, lakes, rivers, and villages all keep their well-known coordinates, and the overall impression is warm and welcome. You immediately feel at ease. The kingdom, however, is not entirely the same as it was before the miasma corroded the plains. Tears of the Kingdom is an interesting juxtaposition of déjà vu and jamais vu. A highly pleasant oscillation between the awareness of old places, faces, and events and the impression that even blatantly repeated material is fundamentally new in its own right. The present collides with the past, the 3 layers of the map, Link's resurrected skills, and the presence of monsters never seen before blend with everything we've known and loved in Breath of the Wild. It must be conceded that the amusing formula lends itself to repetition. For example, activating the topographical towers and overcoming the puzzle hazards of the shrines, all developed from scratch and plainly based on the skills possessed in Tears of the Kingdom, are still required. There are simple puzzles that alternate with far more complex ones, creating a momentum of complexity and infinite variation that presents itself most prominently in the mega riddles given by the main quests. Aside from the shrines, most of the riddles in Tears of the Kingdom have multiple answers, which are frequently tied to the player's perspicacity. Here, Hyrule transforms into the setting for a one-of-a-kind adventure. If everyone's eventual destination is the same, the journey will be documented in a personal diary. Exploration times, order of discoveries, approaches taken. Just like in Breath of the Wild, each traveler will have his or her own route, his or her own story. And we shall tell each other about our particular adventures, exchanging thoughts and facts, vicissitudes and rumors from a terrifyingly interconnected globe. It's everything connected in Tears of the Kingdom. A piece of paper found on a tiny islet in the sky points to a treasure deep down, and the three parts of the map communicate with each other with a coherence that leaves us speechless. Even the placement of building materials spread over Hyrule is justified by the plot. And, just as the people of remote villages weave their stories together, we gamers will do the same to occasionally inform other explorers about the Tears of the Kingdom seen through new eyes.